Hey everybody, it's Mr. Spook. I hope you guys are doing well. Today's video has 4 different parts, and I wanted to set a like goal for you guys to unlock part 2. If this video hits 100 likes, I will post part 2. But without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy the story. Some time ago, we set sail from Fort Lauderdale. Our destination was Lagos, Portugal. The estimated trip time was about 3 to 4 weeks, assuming everything went smoothly. My wife, Hannah, and I spent several months prior to the trip learning how to sail. We had the time and money to pack up and go, and we always wanted to see Lagos, so we decided it was time to put our new skill and sailboat to good use. The first week was exciting. There's a sense of freedom that comes with sailing the open seas, which is funny considering we spent most of our time confined to a 30-foot space. But as we looked out into the seemingly endless waters, we couldn't help but feel like we'd left the world behind and entered a new one. Like all our expectations and worries were stored in a separate reality. Despite the feeling of liberation, there were still a few bumps that first week. The wind wasn't as much of a team player as we initially hoped, and the water got a little rough at times, but we managed. By the second week, we were sailing into the middle of the North Atlantic, roughly halfway between Fort Lauderdale and Lagos. That first morning of the new week, I'd gotten out of bed just before sunrise, made a cup of coffee, and climbed above deck. That was my morning routine. The water was flat and there wasn't any wind. It was foggy out. As we floated forward a bit, the sun beginning to rise, I could see a dark object sticking out of the water. Initially, I thought it was a capsized boat. It was somewhat rounded like the underside of a hull. I quickly woke up Hannah and told her to grab some vests and the first aid kit. But as we got closer, I could see that it wasn't a boat. It was a massive rock. Hannah appeared on deck with the rescue gear in hand, a puzzled look on her face as she asked, "Wait, there's people on that rock?" I thought it was a boat. I was just as confused as her. Why was there a rock in the middle of the ocean? It's supposed to be thousands of feet deep right there. I carefully steered the ship alongside it and shut off the motor. The rock didn't stick out of the water much. I was able to jump from the sailboat onto its surface without an issue. However, the surface area itself was very large, over 5 times that of the boat. "You think it's some sort of underwater mountain?" Hannah asked from the boat. I was walking along the surface. "Maybe we should go under and look." "I'll grab the goggles." Hannah hurried below deck. She loved the water. We both did. Any reason to throw some goggles on and explore. She was game. She appeared back on deck, wearing goggles, a snorkel, and a swimsuit. She lowered the rear ladder and jumped in. I shook my head and smiled. I loved how energetic and curious she always was. She laid face down along the surface of the water, snorkel sticking up for air. I explored further along the top of the rock while she swam around. Then I stopped. There were markings. I knelt down for a closer look. These were man-made, symbols of some sort, like a language. It looked almost like ruins. I reached down to touch one of the engravings, when Hannah suddenly poked her head out of the water. "You have to see this," she said. "Hannah, there's markings on this rock. There's markings on the side of it as well. The side, Yeah, it's like a giant tower. What do you mean? It's a big cylinder. How far does it go down? Hannah shrugged. It's too dark to tell. I think it goes all the way to the bottom. I looked back at the rock below my feet. What the hell was this thing? Why hadn't we ever heard about it? Who made these marks? Has anyone else sailed past this giant rock without noticing it? Come up here, I said. Hannah swam to the boat and climbed up the ladder. Those markings look ancient, she said as she took off the snorkel and goggles and tossed them aside. I knelt back down and rubbed my fingers across one. It began to glow an orangish color. What the fuck? I said as I quickly stood back up. Hannah was about to jump onto the rock. What? Stay there, I said, holding my hand up for her to stop. Why? It's glowing. What is? Suddenly the rock began to vibrate. Nate? Hannah said, panicked. What's going on? I began to stumble back towards the boat, fearing the worst. Then a rectangle opening appeared towards the edge of the rock. The vibrating abruptly stopped. We were both speechless. I hesitated a moment and then slowly approached the opening. Nate, don't, said Hannah. I just want to look real quick. I don't like this. That should have been my first hint. As curious and adventurous as Hannah was, but I couldn't resist taking at least a quick peek. I leaned over the opening and looked inside. There's stairs, I said. Nate, come back. Against my better judgment, I stepped into the opening. I could see the stone stairs descended in a wide spiral. Toss me a flashlight, I hollered to Hannah. Nate, just do it, I snapped at her. She huffed and went below deck. I hate that I raised my voice at her. I hardly ever do. But this was too incredible. It could be the biggest discovery in centuries. Maybe ever. She returned to the deck and tossed me the light. I turned it on and leaned into the stairwell, trying to see as much as I could. I climbed down a step, not thinking. My curiosity was steering me. Another step. Nate? I heard her call my name, but continued anyways. Another step. Nate, stop. Another step. And then another. And then the rock began to shake again. The opening was sealing shut. I hurried back towards the top. Hannah cried out my name. That was the last time I heard from her. It closed before I could get out. Hannah? I yelled for her. Hannah! No answer. Touch the center mark. Still no response. I stood at the top of the stairs for several minutes, listening for her. For any sign that she was trying to get me out, but could not hear anything. I didn't want to leave, in case Hannah was able to figure out how to open the door. But my curiosity was still there. I shined the light down the stairs. I took a deep breath and descended. Soon the darkness faded as the stairwell opened up to a large cylindrical room. Light flickered from a flame-lit chandelier made of what appeared to be iron. Its design looked medieval, maybe older. In the center of the room was a large wooden lectern. I carefully moved over to it and looked. Symbols similar to those I'd seen on the rock were handwritten on the pages. I touched the pages, old and worn. I felt like turning a page would cause it to crumble. Suddenly, as if in response to my touch, the writing began to change. The words shifted and faded around the page until they were in English. He awaits upon his throne of blood and bone, within the tower of ancient stone. I backed away from the book. My curiosity had waned and fear was now coursing through me. I needed to get out. I was confident that what awaited me was something sinister, something evil. I began to feel its presence in the air. Then, as if on cue, it spoke to me. A whisper, like a passing wind, said, "Come to me." I did not move, nor could I gather the words to speak. My heart was drumming rapidly inside my chest. I anxiously glanced overhead once more. Why hadn't Hannah figured out how to open the door yet? She was no dummy. She saw where I'd been standing when the rock began to vibrate. She heard me say the mark was glowing. So, why was I still trapped inside? Then the thought occurred to me. Maybe the door wouldn't open for her. Maybe going down was my only option. I stepped over to the winding stone stairs and peered down. Hannah had said the tower looked as if it had continued all the way to the bottom of the ocean. Thousands of feet. I wondered how much of that I would have to walk. How long would it take? And what awaited me below? I took a moment to steady my breath and continued my descent. Shout out to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacey, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I really look forward to making more content for everyone.